Hello, everybody. I'm back again. Your boy's back again. Um, Now this week this isn't the book I was reading this week. All right, but that's not too big a deal because I've read it. I've read it too many times. All right. This week is The Two Towers, right, by J.R.R. Tolkien. You know that's not the only version I have because I'm out of my mind. I think this is the artwork by your boy, Tolkien himself. Look at him. Happy as a clam. His artwork actually works really well for the books as well. It really does. But I think when I read it, the mass print edition is what gets the most wear, obviously. I can read without bending the back, bro. We all can. Us readers know how to do this. This edition is actually very wide, and so you can actually read it fairly well without destroying the spine. Some of the other mass print editions, right? The lettering gets real up in there, but we don't want to damage the old retro ones. We don't do that. No, 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 no. This bad boy was $1.25 when it came out. Can you imagine? What is this? I think it's the 70s. 73. In 1973, you could buy it for $1.25, people. Mass print edition. It's a little better, but only because I think it's eased up, right? It's not as stiff, but I'm still not damaging this bad boy. I'm not damaging either of them. I just brought them to show them off. Sorry about that. I've read it, okay. I've read this book 4 or 5 times. I don't even know. I've listened to the Andy Serkis version, which I'm thinking might be a video on its own, even though it's the same book. It'll be twice in here. But he does such a different job. But that's not today. I was reading a different book, and it's not fun, right? It's not a great book. But I had also the last 2 weeks haven't been great, right? I don't think I liked those books. And so I'm like, I don't want to keep being negative on this channel. Add to it, I had a long argument online with people about Lord of the Rings. And I think I might make a separate video about that whole issue later. But it made me think of Lord of the Rings, so here we are. The Two Towers. Oh, it still smells like a new book. You know what that smell reminds me of Lord of the Rings. It really does. Okay. Obviously, the rating on this one's a 5 out of 5. Everyone can read this book. Everyone probably should read this book. It's absolutely magical. So, no question there. The question we have, well, one question we have is it even really appropriate to just do this book, right? Because he did make it. He made it a big freaking book. It's all supposed to be one big honking book. But we split it up, right? The publishers did it back in the 60s for ease of publishing, and people have gotten used to it. So we're like, should we even sort of judge this as its own book? And half of me was saying no. But then the other half of me, even in the big fat book, even in the big boy you got, he does this number, right? Book 3, book 4. So it chops itself up. So in that sense, I don't have a problem with it, right? It has its delineations, and so this one's not out of the realm, right? It's not too inappropriate, I don't think. Plus, a certain amount of the market's gotten used to it that way. I think this is 2 books, technically. Was it book 3, book 4? Yeah, it's essentially 2 books. It's essentially 2 books in one. So that's how we're going to do it. But now it's like, why? Why do I, you, us readers, why do we keep coming back to it? If you watched any other videos online about this, it's all true. Everything they say, how great it is, all the compliments you can give it, it deserves all the compliments. But for me, kind of, it's a yes and a no. Because somewhere along the way of my Tolkien fandom, someone gave me the name William Morris, right? And when I started reading William Morris, I was like, did Tolkien ninja a lot of these ideas from him? Because his writings are completely tremendous. I've reviewed one. I'll review more. And I put them in the Tolkien section because they're so tightly related. But then as you keep reading, you start to see, and that's what I believe. I get a sense that Tolkien weaved his stuff into that guy's stuff. You know, not overtly, not he never stated that he did this. It's nothing like that. It's just like, you know, like a movie can have sort of the same type of shots, and it's not that the director doesn't know what he's doing, but it's like an homage kind of thing. It's a tip of the hat, right? Like you sir are an excellent writer kind of thing. It's more along those lines. So in that sense, it might be even a little harder the way Tolkien did it to get the same, what is it, the same feel that William Morris's books give without being William Morris, which lends itself to the history he's trying to make, right? Some of these are just things in my own head, okay? But it's there to be seen if you want to see it. So I will give Tolkien a lot of credit. And, you know, if somebody comes along and says he stole such and such from William Morris, you could just put that off to the side. I think it's what he gave us is too good, right? What is it, like a painter, right? You get like a Da Vinci. Everything is too good. So if you see something you think is a mistake, you don't look at it as a mistake. You look at it as an artistic choice because he shows you in some other places that he could have made it any way that he wanted, right? I take Tolkien the same way. He could have written this book any way he wanted. He had that skill. But he wanted it knitted together loosely like this, like a history. Okay, now I'm not hitting every beat in the book. I could, but I'm not going to hit every beat. What I'm going to do is pick out points in it sort of that affected me on rereads. Not the first time. I can't really. Sometimes you can't. Well, I was younger then, but you can't digest it all in one go if the book's too good. Aragorn. Aragorn in this book. Because it starts real early and it says he wants to go sit on the high seat and have a look about. This high seat is Amon Sul. There's Amon Sul and Amon Hen, I believe. Two hills. One's the seat of seeing, and one is the seat of hearing, I think. And they were made back in ancient times, and you sit on it, and if you're the king or worthy or strong enough or however will you have, you get visions of what's happening out in the world, right? Kind of like the Palantir, but in stone, in a stone form, right? Because Tolkien likes the degradation. The elves made the Palantir, men of Numenor can't, and then the men that come by can't do even the stones that they did, and on we go. Till we get to now, where everyone has their Walkmans and iPads, and no one listens to the trees, right? This is sort of Tolkien-esque. But the reason I like this moment in this book is, and it does it throughout and for every character, they have lives, and they have full motivations that don't have anything to do with the ring, right? They were off doing things that they wanted to do for their own reasons. Just like anyone else in real life. You're living your life, all of a sudden World War II's happened, and next thing you know, you're in the army. Next thing you're looking at Patton and he's doing this mess and you're in a tank, right? You're in a major event, but it isn't your whole world. And you read a lot of fantasy books and they start to lose this sense of the greater world, right? Tolkien never loses that sense. And it fleshes things out and builds things up. The fact that Aragorn has his personal motivations, because he is going to be king. He has things he has to do. He has knowledge he wants to gain from sitting in this seat. But then the horn blows, it's Boromir's in trouble, and he can't sit there. He cannot wait. And off he goes, trying to save the day, right? But the idea that in the midst of this, you can keep track of this character's life, the rest of his life, is so great. Poor Boromir, though. I mean, the book starts with Boromir dying, and it's not. You're real sad about it. Here's what he does to you, though, as a reader. You're sad the way our trio is, our Gimli, our Legolas, and Aaron Aragorn, right? But you're also torn. Because on the one hand, you're very sad that this companion of the journey has gone down. He died. But then you're also very concerned with the hobbits themselves. And this is exactly the way they are. And Tolkien does this a few times, where he sits you down right with the characters. You feel very connected to these people when this happens, because it's just like you're one of the three travelers, and you're asking the same thing they are. You know, it's like, one, I don't want to leave Boromir, but we don't have a lot of time because our boys are in trouble. And that's the exact same questions they ask themselves. Then they get to where they find one boat on the other side. So they figured out, or they're assuming, it's Frodo and Sam went that way. The other hobbits got taken and went the other way. Now, Frodo and Sam could be in as much danger, but they have to make a decision, right? And they choose to go help Merry and Pippin. And for a while, the first time I read through it, it didn't faze me at all. But on rereads, I start to see why Tolkien did this. And it's something about kingship itself. When you look through actual world history, kings act a certain kind of a way because they are responsible for the rest of the nation that they're leading, right? Some are dictators, some are tyrants. World history, human history has tried it every kind of way, right? Military, politicians, lawyers, doctors, in tandem, by your hereditary, by conquest. We've tried multiple different types of kings. And it always, when you read these old histories, it comes across like it starts to be everything he does amplifies itself, right? So, like if you go to a park, that's not the same as the king going to that park. Because when he shows up, if Peter the Great showed up at that park, and he's like, I like the way this park looks, every town in Russia needs a park just like this, then every town in Russia will get a park like that. And, of course, human history flows then on. Things will happen in that park. People will find love. People will be murdered. All the things that happen in human history, but they wouldn't have happened there had Peter the Great not built those. And he wouldn't have built those had he not walked into this one. And so this one starts to mean a thing, right? So in that sense, we start to judge these people, these kings, in a kind of a way. Some, everything works out for. Some are idiots. Some blindly fall into things. Some seem to blindly fall into things and everything works out for them. Right? We constantly judge these people in this sense because it's almost like the mass, the peoples themselves, are looking for a reason to upgrade the king or to not have him, right? Like they're like, everything's good, but it's not perfect. So maybe there's a better way, right? So if this king wasn't the best at everything, maybe I should find someone who is and make him king, right? It sounds goofy. It's kind of what humans have done throughout their history. So it starts to flavor how you perceive a king and how a king should be perceived, right? This is why your boy Kim Jong Il has to have 53 holes in one when he plays golf, and can throw a football over the moon, and can slam dunk from the 3-point line, right? All these goofy lies start to be concocted for this specific reason because he's gauging himself against the mentality of all these people. All right, well, the same thing happens here. In order for this to feel realistic, the King Aragorn has to hold up to that sort of unconscious judging that we, the readers, will do. And we'll go, well, yeah, he's king, but he was a chicken and he left Frodo to die. Right? That might happen. And if you read the books, read all three, and just sort of focus on Aragorn, you'll see all the times where the sort of question comes up, and Tolkien finds a creative way to sort of bridge the gap. So for here, first, Frodo's not a child, right? He is a grown man. He's 33 years old, and he's got his boy who, I think Samwise like 25 or something like this, around his same age but younger. So they're two grown people who made a decision. And grown folk are allowed to make grown folk decisions. Like, we're all at the club. If y'all want to go that way and eat chicken wings, like, bro, I can't stop you. You're an adult. You do what you do. I'm going to go over here and eat a hot dog. This kind of thing, right? Same sentiment, amplified. So in the one sense, he couldn't stop him from going. But in another sense, in the setup that they agreed to, Frodo's actually the leader. Gandalf, Aragorn, all the Boromir, all of them are there to help him. But he is the ring bearer. It's a new position. And for decisions on the ring, he supersedes all the others. It's the way they've set it up. So in that sense, he's sort of equal to Aragorn. Not equal. It's a question. It's a question maybe we don't want to ask. So we don't ask. Right? We are also not, I don't think, technically in Aragorn's territory until he gets into Gondor. So maybe he didn't have that authority either. Right? We ask these kind of questions. At one point, he says, I don't think the king of Gondor is subservient to the king of Rohan. He says, I think these words almost. But then he relents out of his personal choice, right? So they think of these things as they function throughout the world, which, again, very much like real history. When two kings meet back in the day, they'll be like, well, I'm the king of Prussia. Well, I'm like, well, you might be the king of Prussia, but I'm the king of France. And so you'll do what I say. And he'll be like, I might have to do what you say, but you better ask nice because I'm a king and you're not going to talk down to me. I don't give a F who you are. And so he'll ask nice and he'll do it. But if it came to blows, France might win. But then it might be a world war. Right? So he gives them this out, this kind of, he's the ring bearer. He's made a decision. And the group kind of has to follow that decision. And then he chooses to save, the weaker of the two hobbits. And that's how we move along. It's throughout the book, too. Right? And I think on my latest read, I picked up on this more than I ever did. When I first read the book when I was really little, in my mind, because I'm retarded, I refused to call him Aragorn. Every time I read Aragorn, I just read Strider on purpose, because I like my boy Strider. So that by the end, I was kind of thrown that they're like, oh yeah, he's the king. And I'm like, oh crap, I forgot he's like the actual king. I get a little crazy when I read. It was fun though. But this time, right, this last time, I really do get the regalness out of this character that maybe I missed some of the few times before. Or didn't appreciate as much. Let's say that. And so if you reread it, focus on that and you'll see what I mean. It's very interesting. We get to the chapter called Uruk-hai. Also, again, the genius of Tolkien. We are now grouped with the ones who've kidnapped our Merry and Pippin, and they're joined by another group of goblins. They're Uruk-hai, who serve Saruman, and these goblins come in, and you would think they're just like mindless killers. But they're not. I mean, they're all vicious. They'll all kill you. They'll stab each other. They don't care. But the way they start interacting with each other, I felt it felt really corporate to me in a weird way. The viciousness of it, where you can be like, yeah, we work for the same company, but if my division can oust your division and take over your budget, I'll do that, and we'll make more computer chips instead of computer processors, or however you want to break that down. It felt very corporate, where both of them were sniping at each other. One called the other a chicken. The other's like, you wouldn't say that if we're over here. And they were constantly talking about the area they're from. I forgot to write it down. But they'll name like a specific town. Right? And it's like, well, I'm from the White Hand, so I don't have to listen to you. And they're like, well, you won't say that if you make over there and see one of them 9 riders. And he's like, F your 9 riders. They ain't here now. You always need them guys to bail you out. I'm like, well, step up if you want to do something. I got this knife. Don't need no rider if I got this knife. Right? They're constantly at each other. But then there's this web in your mind. You can feel this web of other politics that just fills out their world. And it's like he just opened the window for you, and you just get to peek in and see all this crazy. Where obviously at the very top is the CEO. The eye of Sauron is at the top. He'd make the ultimate decision. But a lot of politics could go into get someone getting called up to the big cheese, right? And he does this, I think, twice in the book for certain. Here with these Uruk-hai, where they're infighting with the goblins that come from Mordor. And we do it sort of at the end of the book. It's very fleshed out, and it just sends your mind racing. Because I think if you just read those bits and really focused on them, you could turn the whole story around, right? And tell the story completely from the point of view of the evil side. And get this entirely different feel of the whole world and all the events and everything that's happened. But it'd be the same events, right? And you get that sense from these conversations. It's absolutely brilliant. Also at that place, right? They get encircled, those orcs, those Uruk-hai, get encircled by the riders of Rohan. And in most books, right, it's sort of one and done. I got you, it's done. But in a real battle, even if you're numerically superior, you're sometimes still not sure how exactly it's going to go. I read a book where Peter the Great had Charles the 12th like dead to rights in this perfect spot, and he's 10 to 1 number advantage, position advantage, food advantage, every advantage you could have. And he's still very nervous about actually engaging in the fight, because it's one thing to, on paper, win this fight, right? The Rohirrim had him circled. It's one thing to win that fight, but it's another to do the action, right? You gotta play the game on the field, no matter how talented a team you have. And once the game starts, anything can actually happen. Now, we know what happens. Ish. Right? Because Aragorn had met these riders before, so we know they don't all die. But when he's retelling it from the point of view of the hobbits, you don't really know what's going to happen. and you get swept up in the battle. They had a contingent of orcs in the woods that try and like flank a pincer kind of move or whatever, and it gets a little iffy for a second. Our hobbits get away clean for the most part, but I was struck by how much he got me to care about nameless, faceless riders. Because I care about the hobbits, Merry and Pippin, and I don't like the orcs or the Uruk-hai, then by default I want the riders of Rohan to win this fight. But I know something they don't, that there's this contingent that could flank them, right? And they have to sort that out themselves. It's sort of a battle of wills between the commanders. You have your advantages, I have mine. I'm putting mine to the test as well as you, and let's see who's superior, right? But I care that any of those riders die. I don't want them to die because they're there to save my boys, right? It's quick. It's very quick. There's very little time to develop any of the riders other than Eomer in a conversation, one conversation with Aragorn. But you like them. You like them very quickly. It's very hard to do. Make me like a character I just barely met, right? And he does. And he gives me a sort of a realistic feel of a sort of a medieval style battle. Well, I say medieval, it's any battle, right? You can be if you've seen the footage when they're gonna go get Bin Laden, right? They send SEAL Team 6 or whichever one it is. It's a tense moment for the president, for all these people watching at the White House in the Situation Room. You can see the tenseness of the moment when this action's happening. These are Navy SEALs. It's modern times. There's guns, but anything could happen. They could all blow up. Bin Laden could get away. You know, these people could die. It's very tense. Command is always very tense, and he doesn't lose sight of that either. Without harping on it, mind you. Very difficult to do. We get to Treebeard. I'm going to be honest. As much as I love the books, and I do, I could live without the trees. It's me personally. I do live in East Texas. I do see a lot of trees. Not that interesting. In any case, what's interesting about Treebeard is the same thing that's interesting with Tom Bombadil. It's a thing that exists in the world beyond the story. As important as the story is, he functions outside of it. He doesn't much bother. He doesn't care which way the war goes. He doesn't care about these things. He's seen a bunch of wars. He'll see a bunch more. The world goes on. No matter how big the war is, the world keeps spinning. Sky's still blue. The sun still rises. I love that idea that he imbues his story with. Again, realism. It adds realism. At this point, we also start to see what he's going to do writing-wise. The groupings he has. Here is Frodo and Samwise. Here is Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas. Here is Merry, Pippin, and Treebeard. That's a lot of characters to have to deal with, to have to juggle. It's hard enough to have them all in one room, which he can do. But now how do I tell a story, who do I tell what story first, in what order? How do I not lose the threads? If I care too much about one, will I stop caring about the other? How do I not make it feel repetitive? All these things start to come into play because I'm now juggling 3-4 different plots at once. Extremely hard to do. It can give you a more complex story, but it's also more chances for you to trip up, right? The timing's off. The this is off. The that is off. The reader will pick up on all the detail. The more you want to feed me, the more I'll pick up on. And if you can hit every note, I just soar with you. If you mess up, we all fall down. But he breaks his people apart so that it's easier to digest everything that's happened into each of them. He can spread out the ideas he wants to give between each of them. And then callbacks, slight callbacks, so you can be like, this is around the time you know, Pippin's talking to Treebeard is when Frodo's turning this corner. And so in your mind with the maps, you start to see where everyone is just at the same time. It's really incredible. Oh my god, my notes literally just have Gandalf and a heart. I can't describe how good it feels when this man comes back. When he comes, you think it's Saruman for a second, but when he comes back and it's Gandalf. Oh, when I first read it when I was little tear in my eye of joy. Just the wizard's back, bro. Oh, it's gonna be all right. The wizard's back. He's gonna know something. He's gonna be able to do something. He's gonna help us somehow. There's just the magic that actually follows Gandalf is unreal. I'm trying to think of another character that's like this. I can't think of one. Maybe Sherlock Holmes, where you just instantly know. You feel like a kid. Here's an adult. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to get ice cream. You know, you just feel instantly better just the instant he shows up. It's glorious. I absolutely love Gandalf. Now, when he comes back, they want to know, like we want to know, what happened with the Balrog. Right? It's one of the most remembered fights in the whole book. Him fighting this Balrog. But they fall, right? Just like in the movie, down. They fall off the bridge, just straight down into the abyss. I forget they called it something specific. I have to reread the book because I don't exactly remember what this hole is called. Like Durin's Chasm or some mess like this, right? I forget. Anyway, he says he falls down. What does it say? Down to dark tunnels not delved by the dwarves, but gnawed by nameless things. And I'm like, just the description of tunnels, large tunnels, gnawed out of the earth by nameless things that he won't mention in the light of day. And you're like, I'm kind of terrified. It's some kind of a horror show down there. In the same sense that there's Treebeard, and he's sort of nice, there's all this other evil that just lurks in the depths, way down deep. And I'm like, that's absolutely horrifying. And I wonder what the crap is down there. Right? Because the Balrog didn't seem too happy to stay either. But then it got me thinking, again, you can have these wider thoughts because his lore holds it up. But I was thinking, right, Morgoth, who came before Sauron, didn't make the Balrogs. He just sort of empowered them. So Sauron didn't make the Balrogs. They were like the lieutenants of Morgoth. I mean, and they came down they're one of these nameless things down, this evil down here. The Watcher in the Well in Book 1, who almost eats Frodo, is one of these nameless things, I believe. And I'm like, hey, the dwarves dug stairs all the way down to those tunnels. Who these dwarves were, I have no idea. Y'all guys are nuts. They might have got eaten by whatever the crap is down there. But A, that's terrifying. B, the dwarves are dealing with a whole nother set of problems. Way on that side, right? Just all this evil stuff we're just going to deal with. I don't hear the dwarves complaining about it. Right? All these elves are fine talking to their mess. They're not down there in them. They're not down in them tunnels fighting nameless things, are they? No, they're not. Oh, what was I going to say? That's what I was going to say. To me, it speaks to this larger war that's happening. Because Caradhras, the mountain that almost, stormed them out while they were trying to cross. One of these mountains is over Moria. I think the mountains, because essentially the mountains are what's keeping everything down in this dark pit. The mountains themselves. I think, in a way, they're tricking them with sort of the magic of the world that exists. Because one of the gods likes the earth, one of the gods likes the air, etc. So with what they're imbued with, I think they're keeping these things lost down there, right? So in a sense, the mountains are fighting nameless evils. And when men and dwarves poke around, they let some of Pandora's box slip out into the real world, and then they have to deal with that, right? But I think that's sort of why the mountains were so mad. The mortals, sort of the little peoples of the world, are the ones making a mess that the mountains are trying to keep locked down. And I like that idea. Again, this broader war happening in the midst of this mission that we have. Such a great idea. But I think it holds up. I think the mountains are trying to save people. And sort of that's how the dwarves have to interact with nature. Same as the elves should have been dealing with the ants, but maybe they didn't help them find the ant wives. I mean, that's on the elves, people. You're not going to convince me otherwise. You've been alive this whole time, and you let these ant wives get lost. That's on you, bro. The dwarves of the mountains have to make their own peace. And men sort of go through all of it. His canon, his universe, really holds up to this kind of deep thinking. Sort of like Star Trek used to. I say used to, because some of the new Trek sucks. I mentioned that about kings. Now, I already kind of covered that. I like we have a siege battle in the middle of this book at Helm's Deep. Again, real history. The Duke of Marlborough, famous for winning siege battles. Because that was what was big then. I keep a good chunk of dudes in this castle. If you can't get me out, then you lose. They'd almost agree to this. Because if I have 10,000 dudes in a castle, or a city, however much they can hold out, and you try and bypass me, I can just run out and flank you, right? Now, they wouldn't do that fight to see who would win. They would assume, right? Because they're all gentlemen and they kind of know each other. They'll be like, look, you would lose unless you take me out of this hole. So we can both agree that if you can't get me out of here, you should leave. And that would happen a lot. I can't keep fighting here. The winners come. Maybe I'll make it last 2 or 3 winners. It run out of money. Everyone has to go home. I won the war. A war is won and lost by this singular siege. So sieges are a big thing in actual history, and that he put a siege battle in here, and that it sort of, you see it, the emotions of it, as well as the mechanics of it, all interplay wonderfully. And we're saved by a cavalry charge. Cavalry from within, and then Gandalf and Erkenbrand, I think that's how you say his name, show up with all the cavalry and, save the day. A cavalry charge is always great. I love history loves a cavalry charge. It's just the way it is. It's too in your mind, it's too cinematic. Even when they don't work, like Napoleon's cavalry charge in and then they all lost. But it's heroic. All the banners and the horses, people with great armor on. It's too romantic. Romanticized. We then leave all of that behind. Again, all of that gets left, and we go right to Frodo and Samwise Gamgee. And normally, in a normal story, you would think that this is the wrong way to do it. You don't lead with the action, because then the non-action would feel boring. But it's somehow, by the time you get here, you've almost forgotten about Frodo. And so when you're re-reminded, you're like, oh man, I'm a bad person because I forgot the point of this. And so you want to now really invest to not be a bad person in a weird way. Then once you really invest, you care. And it's this It's just very emotional. It's just It's just interpersonal. It's a very interpersonal, emotional story on their side. The desolation, the desperation. They're paired up with Gollum, who they pretty sure wants to kill them and take the ring. They're lost in the middle of nowhere by themselves. Only so much food. They don't have a real ability to get more. So once they run out of lembas bread, they might die. Right? So they're really out on their own. There's a lot of loneliness. And then you start to realize everyone else does have a larger group. The other side has Gandalf. The other side has Aragorn and Gimli. And even when the hobbits were lost, they got refound by these heroes and by Treebeard. All Frodo has is his boy Sam and a Gollum that wants to slit his throat. It really weighs heavy on you. He they pair up with Gollum. He says, "Take me to the gate." He takes him to the gate. So they meander up to the gate. Then he saves them from getting captured. Says, "I know another way." And then they start to meander down to that other way. Again, very realistic. If you're not used to this kind of a thing, even being an adult, you might get lost. Add to it, you had a particular mission that you didn't know how to do, you would make a decision and it might be wrong. That wrong would lead you the wrong way. And that's exactly what happens. So the fact that then Tolkien times out to perfection the rest of the events of his story to match up with this detour. Absolutely genius. Everything times out perfectly in the end. In the end, obviously. We meet Faramir, Boromir's brother. And here, another thing. Very interesting to me. If we go back in time, which Faramir talks about, he was sleeping by the river Anduin one time, because they're out and about. They're adventurous men. Faramir had a dream first about whatever Imladras, right? Rivendell, where Elrond is, to go there, that something important was going to happen. I think this was a message from the gods, right? Again, one of the gods likes water, and you see this play out over and over where the evil doesn't like the water, corrupts the water, gets rid of the water, because the strength of that good god is in the water. So, I think this god was given a message to Faramir, right? He got it first time. He got it 3 more times before his brother got the message vaguely once, right? They take this message to their father, and Boromir steps up. He's like, no, I'm not going to send my little brother on this random quest. I'll do it. It's the manly thing to do. But if he hadn't, right? If Faramir had acted the first time he had this vision, this sort of dream, and said, I have to go do this thing, Father, and his father lets him go, then it would have been Faramir. Maybe he wouldn't have even tried to take the ring because he's more strong internally, where his brother was strong physically, right? I don't know how the breakup would have happened. I'm not sure Faramir or Aragorn don't leave. One of them might have stayed with Frodo the whole time. That could upend a lot of the things that have to happen in the war. It could have changed how the end happens, right? Like, let's say he resists all the way to Mount Doom. And then it's a fight between Aragorn and Faramir. And then Faramir falls the way Gollum did, right? Or maybe Aragorn has to kill Faramir. And, because at the end, the king will have to supersede everyone. I think Aragorn could have resisted the ring enough to dump it out. We'll never know. But the tail ends of what happens, because they have a lot of politics in Gondor as well. I think some part of Denethor never liked Aragorn. There's some stories where Aragorn went and helped when Denethor was young. And I think Denethor had an idea of who he was, but never mentioned it. Again, because he's in the seat of power now, the seat he'll have to give up if Aragorn shows up. because he's the king and Denethor's only the steward. Well, Boromir has the same, if not more, pride than his father. He's like, we've been running this thing 200 years or whatever it is. I don't see why we've not earned the right to be up top. Why should we bow to this person who came out of nowhere? Why don't you go back to the north and let us run the south? It could have been a civil war, right? And that's some of the magic that Tolkien's instilled in this story. Sometimes in real life, everything actually kind of works out for a while. You know, sort of World War II. It just sort of worked out that Winston Churchill was there to be ready to resist Hitler, right? It just so happens that FDR was there to help America resist Hitler and the Japanese, right? Sometimes history gives you this little moment where everything's going to work out right. And I think this is one of those for Lord of the Rings, for Middle-earth. It has a long history, if you read some of the other works, a long history of internal strife, of wars, of personalities getting in the way, of people not listening, of almost right but not right. To have this moment where everything works out right so that the ring can be destroyed, right? Again, adds to the whole myth of his story, but it also, it just elevates the story itself, the individual, like what is it, like Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star. It's a singular moment. It wouldn't have happened again. You need a Skywalker to blow up that Death Star. It's a good thing we had one. This kind of thing. The story doesn't always go perfectly, but sometimes it does. Absolutely love that. The way Gollum wants him to go is Cirith Ungol. I absolutely love the name Cirith Ungol. It just sounds menacing, right? This is the, I don't know, 10,000 stairs up a mountain in Shelob's lair. But the idea, right? Just he wanted to take the path of Cirith Ungol, and you're like, ooh, that sounds bad, bro. Now, in the first reading, obviously, you get wrapped up in it, the same as you did the first half. And we all know, we've all done this, where the book starts to run out on us, right? And so I'm getting a little tense because we're trying to avoid Shelob, but I know the book's running out on me. So clearly I'm not going to get the ring destroyed this book. No need to worry about that. I have another book. It'll be destroyed there. But, I'm running out of time. And the Shelob, I don't see how they can get away from Shelob. Well, they don't. Frodo gets got. Samwise then heroically avenges his boy. But then he hits me with like, Samwise is like, Frodo's dead. And I'm just, when I was little, oh, I cried. I really, I was reading like this and I'd go, and I'd look away as if that's going to make the rest of the pages be different, right? Tearing up reading this mess because Frodo's dead. And I just like, that's it. Frodo's dead. He's not Gandalf. He can't come back. Boromir's gone. Frodo's dead. So I was just like, it's done. This is over. And Samwise's crying like I am. And he puts the necklace of the ring on him. And he's like, I'll take it the rest of the way. And I'm like, my boy's a hero. And I'm going to cry and I'm not going to be okay for the rest of book 3 with Frodo dead. And then he, at the tail end, just these last few pages, orcs come and they're like, oh, they start making fun of him like, oh, Shelob got one. And he's like, you idiot. Shelob doesn't kill him. She stings him and takes him back. She likes to eat him alive. And I'm like, me and Sam are the same way. We're like, oh my God, Frodo's still alive and I left him. And I'm like, you idiot, you left him. He goes to try and get him. This gate shuts. They walk off and I'm like, ah, crap. That's it. That's how we end the book. Now, when it ended for me, I was reading sort of late at night. So I couldn't start the next book yet. And I didn't have the next book. I think I had to go get it out of the library. That hurts. When you want to go to school and you're like, well, it's history class. I know all this anyway. I'll crank out my Lord of the Rings and get back at it. Can't do it. Got to wait till like whenever the time is. I go to the stupid library. Whenever I have a moment to go to the library and get this third book. It was rough. Ooh, I was crying. That's how this one ends. All right. Let's see if I have I blabbed long enough. Plenty, plenty. Um, Book's 100% worth it. You can get it almost anywhere on God's green earth. For any almost the prices will vary. I'm sure if you wait long enough, you'll find them on sale. I think I bought them. I think they were one time on Kindle. They were on sale for like $2 or $3. It comes and goes. Keep an eye out. But definitely, if you've not read it, go read it. Even if you don't want to read it anyway. Even if it's not your style, it is your style. If you love to read this book. Oh man. Okay. All right. Ads. Y'all know how it goes. I'm putting all these books back while I let the ad roll. Yeah. No, the book I'm reading right now, which I guess will be next week's book, which won't matter if you're reading this from the future. I guess if you looked at them chronologically, you'd know which one it is. Oh, crap. I'm dropping stuff. Okay. But next week's book, I'm probably not going to like, spoiler alert. But I'm going to go over it. We'll have to see how it ends. I'm like two bits from it. Yes, I didn't reread this week specifically, but I've read this book like 9 times, people. It's not a big deal. I wonder if I should have this big fat boy on my desk, too. It's kind of tattered version. I'll do it. How long is that? That's long enough for an ad, right? You're convinced to buy my book, right? Yeah. All right. I will talk to you people next week.